This morning I'm going to be flying on Qantas in business class on their stalwart Boeing 737-800 aircraft. This ain't going to be any ordinary domestic Australian flight review, however. I'd say we're going to be taking perhaps the most peculiar flight in the whole Qantas network. One that I'd say is the most strangest of flights that you can take within Australia. More accurately, we're going to be flying to Norfolk Island, a tiny and incredibly remote subtropical Pacific island paradise some 1400 kilometres off the coast of mainland Australia. To get there, we literally have to take a flight overseas on an international flight that's all but official in name, flying beyond Australia's maritime borders and airspace to get there, and even pass through customs once we arrive. Sure, this all sounds very confusing, doesn't it? So I've made the trip to Sydney to find out for myself what the Norfolk Island flight experience is really like. So without further ado, come join me for this incredible aviation adventure as we journey over to the Pacific Ocean to Australia's most easterly and most populated external territory, and come see how Qantas deliver on this rare, somewhat domestic, somewhat international feeling journey today. Good morning and welcome to Sydney International Airport. It's bright and early and it's going to be an incredibly exciting day today. I've travelled extensively to all Australia's mainland states and territories, but today we're going to do something totally new. We're going to fly to Australia's most populated external territory. We're going to fly on Qantas on 737-800 in business class all the way to the external territory of Norfolk Island. If you're familiar with your geography, Norfolk Island is a very small subtropical island located approximately 1400 kilometres off the nearest point in Australia. It's actually closer to New Zealand and New Caledonia, where it's about 800 kilometres north of New Zealand and about 800 kilometres south of New Caledonia. Anyway, today's flight is also going to be an incredibly unique one. We're technically still flying to an Australian territory. Due to the external nature of this territory, it does mean it has unique circumstances. It doesn't have Australian duty taxes like on the mainland, and it also has its own unique customs regulations. So yeah, today's flight, it is an international flight to essentially what will be a domestic destination in the end. You can travel there with a driver's license if you are an Australian citizen, but they do highly recommend you bring your passport. In the unexpected event of a diversion, you could end up in New Zealand or New Caledonia. I'll be taking my passport anyway and using that to travel through the terminal today, because I'm going to be continuing on to Auckland with Air Chatham's on Thursday in about 4 days' time. So yeah, it should be a really unique flight, this one. Get all the international flavour to it, all the international travel rules like liquid aerosols and gels will still apply, and yeah, you will need to go through a special passport lane to get through to go to Norfolk Island, and yeah, you can buy duty free and tax free and all that sort of stuff as well. Norfolk Island is about a 2.5 hour flight to the northeast of Sydney. Should be a really unique one. So without further ado, let's now head to the terminal, get checked in, and see you airside at the international terminal. Before we head into the airport terminal, just a little bit of flight information about today's route. So Norfolk Island is a great circle distance of approximately 1,680 kilometres from here in Sydney. It's pretty well a northeasterly direction straight out over the Pacific Ocean, where you'll find Norfolk all the way between New Caledonia and New Zealand. Considered flight time is 2.5 hours, although today with really good flying conditions we're going to do it in just 2 hours. For your information, Sydney Kingston Smith International Airport is by far the busiest international and domestic airport in Australia. Very much the main international gateway into Australia, services the greater Sydney region, which by many accounts is still the largest city in Australia, although some are increasingly now saying it's Melbourne. Anyway, Sydney International Airport is located just 8 kilometres south of Sydney CBD. You'll find Sydney International Airport located on the southern coastline of Sydney, adjacent to the massive Botany Bay. Really is a massive airport encompassing a total land area of over 907 hectares. It's a true triple runway operation here in Sydney, so a very busy airport indeed. Peak passenger numbers actually peaked at around 44 million just prior to the pandemic. From here in Sydney, you can fly pretty well all over Australia to numerous regional and interstate capital destinations, and also fly to destinations in 5 of the 6 regularly inhabited continents. Europe is the exception to this. However, with Qantas's delayed Project Sunrise, they expect to have flights from here in Sydney to as far abroad as London, hopefully by around 2026. Back to this morning's flight in question. Check-in and bag drop counters for Qantas can be found in row C here in the departures hall of Sydney Airport. Flying on Australia's flag carrier from the nation's busiest airport today, it's really no surprise to see that Qantas have by far the biggest presence here in the departures hall of Sydney Airport. They also have the most amount of automated check-in and bag drop kiosks as well. Many of the other airlines still have old-fashioned check-in counters. Whilst it's very much true I'm flying a long way overseas today, strictly speaking I'm not actually flying to a destination that isn't otherwise already a part of Australia. So I'm very unsure as to whether these self-serve kiosks and bag drops will actually work, considering they require a passport, even though for this flight you technically do not actually need a passport. Self-check-in and bag drop is a very straightforward affair for Qantas international flights here in Sydney. Departing to, let's say, sovereign countries which are not a part of Australia is a pretty straightforward affair. Just got to scan your passport, follow your prompts, there you can check in, print off your bag tags and then proceed to the self-service baggage drop. And just like that, we're all checked in for our flight to Norfolk Island. Did go to the automated bag drop and check-in facility. Didn't work for me, however. Didn't recognise my passport or didn't allow me to check in per se. As a friendly member of crew, they directed me to a special check-in area just behind the main check-in area where the United States flights leave for. Interestingly enough, there's a flight to New York at the same time with people checking in. So I had to check in there. There's a special bag drop area. They didn't seem too familiar with the Norfolk Island flight. It's only a couple of flights a week. Slightly disappointing, there didn't seem to be a priority lane for business class at this special counter, but yeah, there was really no one there anyway. So if you're flying to Norfolk Island, you just got to go to that check-in counter over there. Flying business class today, I do get access to the fast track lane at Sydney Airport, so that's really good. Should speed up my process through security today. Without further ado, let's now head over to the international departure gate and go through customs and international security for our flight to Norfolk Island. It's going to be a very unique experience flying an international flight to a domestic location. And just like that, we're through customs and international security. Very unique experience going through Australian Border Force customs to go to Norfolk Island. Special counter for Norfolk Island flights, and also the couple other occasional international domestic flights that leave from Sydney. Norfolk Island is a duty-free island in that they don't pay GST like on the Australian mainland. So yeah, we're going to now go over to the tourist refund scheme. Really not sure if I'm going to be able to claim a tax refund, but I'm going to give it a try anyway. There's conflicting reports as to whether you can claim TRS when flying to Norfolk. Might just be for Norfolk Island residents, I'm not sure. But in any case, I am flying on to New Zealand from Norfolk Island, so maybe they'll see my case. So yeah, let's give it a crack and do a public service for you and confirm whether or not you can claim TRS as a mainland Australian resident going to Norfolk Island.
Can I please have the customer Ohio Caprio coming arrive?
And just like that, absolutely thrilled to confirm my mission to claim the Tourist Refund Scheme, otherwise known as the TRS, was a success today. The friendly officer did seem a little bit unsure at first whether she'd be able to do it, but checked with her superior who gave it all okay. So if you are travelling to Norfolk and make a big purchase beforehand, do bring your passport, and well worth doing. You can claim up to $900. You do have to declare when you come back to Australia. For that drone I bought, $600, get my $60 tax back on that. So that's really a great way to start our Norfolk trip. With TRS formalities now out of the way now, let's now head to the Qantas International Business Class Lounge for this flight to Norfolk today. So let's go and check it out. For your information, to get into the business lounge here in Sydney, it's not just Qantas Business Class passengers that can get in the door, also Qantas Platinum 1, Platinum, Qantas Gold, Qantas Club members, and also Qantas Club annual guest card holders can get in the door as well. Likewise, those with relatable Emirates Skywards status or One World status can also get in the door. You don't necessarily have to be flying Qantas either. You could be flying a Jetstar, Emirates or a One World flight, and with the right status you can also get in the door as well. So this morning's my only second time ever visiting the business lounge here in Sydney. Last time was back in 2022 before I flew to Wellington in New Zealand. Very much how I remember it from last time, as in it's a really massive lounge here in Sydney. Probably can see how it probably is the flagship business lounge in the whole of the Qantas network. Here mid-morning on a Sunday, it's only moderately busy thankfully, as I've heard quite a few horror stories about this lounge being really overcrowded during peak times. Anyway, this lounge can really be described as having three main sections. There's really fairly similar left and right wings of the lounge. Then you kind of got a central area of the lounge where there's this really long sort of bar table where you can sit up at. It's kind of got wines on the table and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the two wings of the lounge both kind of have their own self-service food and beverage stations. So here you've got some good breakfast foods at this time of morning, hot and cold options, hot English breakfast foods, you've got fruits, you've got salads, all that sort of stuff. And you got self-service, a drinks station as well. You can get self-service booze, including pour your own beer at any time of day, self-service spirits, and also a self-service coffee machine as well. If you do prefer a barista made coffee, you can however get this. Just head to the central zone, that big long bar table at the end of there, you can get a barista made coffee. Here in the business lounge, you've got a pretty good variety of different seating configurations which should suit many different people and many different applications. Good range of bar stool style seating, you've got tables and chairs, you've got more lounge chairs, seating for groups, seating for private individuals, people wanting to get down to work. There's all sorts of different seating configurations. I head to the end of the lounge where there's this little overflow sort of area. It's opened up today. Well, it's not the fanciest of area of the lounge. I head here to get window view. As everywhere else in the lounge, it's pretty well impossible at this time of morning to snag a seat by the window. Talking of views, they're not perfect like the Spire Lounge back in Perth, but at least they're there, unlike many lounges such as Qantas International Business Lounge in Melbourne. So overall the views are not too bad, if they're a little bit partly obscured by the roofing underneath. As for food this morning in the lounge, expecting a more substantial business class meal on board, so just have a small serving of bacon with scrambled eggs and hash browns. Tasted reasonably okay, albeit nothing amazing. Had a beer as well, early morning to wash it all down. Why not? We're flying to such an amazing place like Norfolk Island. In a nutshell, Qantas International Business Lounge is pretty satisfactory here in Sydney. Definitely showing a little bit signs of age. Really looking forward to that makeover that's expected to be coming up pretty soon. Alrighty, and just like that, we've had a very pleasant hour and a half or so in the Qantas International Business Lounge. Very pleasant lounge here in Sydney. Definitely a bit of a step up from your old Qantas Club. Absolute bonus you can do it on what technically is a domestic flight from an international terminal. So yeah, good range of food and beverage at this lounge. Reasonably good views as well. Good range of continental and hot English breakfast foods. Certainly can't complain with that. Good range of self-service drinks and all that sort of stuff as well. Alcohol available anytime, unlike old Qantas clubs where you've got to wait till midday. Today we're departing from gate 26A. Conveniently, it's only a couple minute walk from the Qantas International Business Lounge. So without further ado, let's do this and head to Norfolk Island. Should be an absolute cracker of a flight.
To Wellington, departing downstairs at bus bay 26E. Please make your way.
So this morning it looks like we're departing from bus bays, which are 26A to 26G. So to get to these, you take the escalator down to the bottom. Here, this time of morning, it looks like mainly flights to New Zealand are departing from here, including also my flight to Norfolk Island. Once you do get to these bus gate waiting areas, there isn't really a huge amount to do or see here other than wait. There's a couple of vending machines, there's restrooms, that sort of stuff. But yeah, if you want any food and beverage, recommend you get it before you arrive at the waiting gates. Anyway, the one really cool thing about bus bays is being on the ground level, you really get some amazing view of modern international aircraft out there. Looking at that Qantas A380. From the ground level, looking a little bit up, you really do get to appreciate how enormous the aircraft is. Also got some great views of our Japan Airlines 787, a Cathay Pacific plane coming in as well, even American and United jets as well. So amazing plane spotting here from the 26 gate bus gates here in Sydney. And just like that, boarding is now announced for our flight to Norfolk Island. Only about 20 minutes ahead of the scheduled flight time. Doesn't look like it's going to be an overly busy flight today. Maybe about a little over half full in my estimations. Anyway, being a bus gate today does mean we do have to take a bus out to the middle of the tarmac to meet our plane. So once we're there, I'll then go over the aircraft information for today's flight. Even though bus bays do add a little bit of time getting to and from the aircraft, really don't get sick of taking the old bus out to the plane. Really saying about getting to drive out on the tarmac and get up and close to all the modern jet aircraft as you go by. And just like that, that first Qantas Boeing 737-800 coming up here on our left is our ride over to Norfolk Island this morning. Registration Victor Hotel, Victor Zulu Juliet. First delivered in 2011 to Qantas's New Zealand subsidiary Jet Connect, then transferred officially over to the mainland Qantas brand in May 2018. Puts this aircraft at 13.1 years of age at taking this flight. So, welcome aboard Qantas's Boeing 737-800 aircraft. This is very much the stalwart aircraft that you'll find operating on much of Qantas's intercity domestic jet route network. Also, many of the trans-Tasman services, flights to the South Pacific, and also short-haul international flights you'll find using the 737. In economy on Qantas's 737s, it's very much a stock standard free layout, but because we're flying business class today, let's concern ourselves with that, where it's a free row 2 configured business class cabin. In terms of seating on the 737-800, very much the usual maroony colour leather big recliner seats that you'll find in business class. They're fairly generous seat pitch, around about 94 centimeters, about 37 inch, also about 56 centimeter or 22 inch width as well. That being said, the legroom's only marginally better than an extra row seat, so if you're purely after a bit of extra legroom, maybe just get an extra row seat. To your side, you'll also find a fold-out tray table. This one pops out of your armrest there, and yeah, it's a reasonably sizey, fairly stock standard tray table nonetheless. In the centre console between the two seats, you'll also find a little pull-out cocktail bench. This is perfect if you're just having a drink, perhaps a pre-departure beverage or something like that. Talking of pre-departure beverages, pretty disappointing this morning, to be honest. All I got was a pre-packaged bottle of water, just like you get on any Qantas flight, even often in economy. There was no pre-departure offering of orange juice or sparkling water, let alone sparkling wine, let alone champagne for this flight. What I was given, however, was an incoming passenger card for Australia, which I thought was a little bit strange considering I am already in Australia and I'm arriving into Norfolk Island from a flight already from Australia. Luckily, the friendly cabin crew clarified to everyone over the PA that we did indeed not have to fill in the immigration part of the incoming passenger card. However, we do have to fill in the customs part, just like if you were to arrive in Australia. So your same quarantine questions and your same sort of customs questions do apply for when you arrive on Norfolk Island as well. They have their own unique customs regulations there. Likewise, if you were to return to Australia directly from Norfolk Island, you'd also have to fill in the same card in exactly the same way, disregarding the immigration part of the questions. Interestingly enough, prior to July 1, 2016, Norfolk Island was actually Australia's only self-governing external territory. This meant for all intensive purposes it was actually legally considered to be outside Australia's migration zone. This actually meant even Australian and New Zealand citizens travelling from the mainland were required to actually travel with a passport to travel to Norfolk Island, and you couldn't just reside there either, you needed a special permit. And just like that, we're finally pushing back. We're actually pushing back about an hour behind schedule now. We're all boarded, ready to go, but quite a mishap with the external baggage handling crew. They thought our flight was leaving an hour later than they should have, so they rocked up to the plane with our luggage considerably late. Really inexcusable, this one. Often you can have logistics delays, but they simply got the time wrong. That's just shocking organisation in my opinion. Anyway, we are now pushing back. So what better time now to sit back, relax and enjoy our lengthy taxiway out on a beautiful day here in Sydney, and then an absolute spectacular takeoff out over Sydney, where we'll see amazing views of the Sydney CBD, iconic Harbour Bridge and the Opera House, and then we'll take a turn to the northeast as we cross the Sydney coastline and head over to Norfolk Island. And what better time now to sit back, relax and enjoy our stunning takeoff out of Australia's beautiful harbour city today. Really amazing conditions for flying and amazing views to be had. that we've got that absolutely spectacular takeoff out of Sydney out of the way, we're now well and truly on our way to cruising altitude as we head out over the Pacific Ocean. From here it's about 1700 kilometres until we see land again. That will be only moments before we reach Norfolk Island. Now as we wait for our business class meal service to get underway, let's have a look in a little bit more detail at some of the features of our recliner seats here. So on the right hand side at centre console you've got the control buttons for the recline on the seat. Also got a fold out adjustable footrest there. Did try using it, but to be honest I actually found it more comfortable not using it, didn't really see its need. Anyway, you also got adjustable headrests there as well, quite well padded, fairly comfortable overall. As I alluded to before, the tray table pops out of the centre console here. Fairly decent size tray table. Conveniently it does fold into half, so yeah, at a pinch you can get out of your seat during a meal service or whatnot when the table is unfolded. There's also that small little cocktail bench there that you share amongst both passengers seating there. Today I've chosen to seat in free alpha, last row of the business cabin. This just gives me the added benefit of being able to keep my bag at the seat underneath. Luckily I got no one next to me, so I can actually put that seat in the middle centre part of the seat. So yeah, I've got full leg room and I can still keep my bag at close disposal, so that really works well. Now on to in-flight entertainment for today's flight. As you can see there's an IFE screen built in the seat behind. Not a bad system this one, certainly seen it quite a few times now on both business and economy class flights with Qantas. The system has a pretty decent range of both movies and TV shows on the system, bit of kids content as well, plenty of evergreen content there. It's not going to be the most extensive award-winning collection, but it's a pretty good range as well. You can shortlist your stuff as well to watch at a later date. So yeah, not a bad system this one. It's also got in-flight moving map and that sort of stuff as well, so that's much appreciated. One thing I'm not totally a fan of with the IFE screen on Qantas's 737-800 is they're not most responsive screens, to be honest. They're quite a pain to use. I actually prefer to use the remote control that's stowed at the seat. Better to use that because the screen ain't very responsive. Not very bright either, so not the most modern screen. A little bit annoyingly as well, several of the shows that I had earmarked to potentially watch, when I went to watch them, it directed me to watch it on the app. So not all the content that you can see on the TV screen you can actually watch. Anyway, going on to the app, interestingly enough, I could also get the stream to your own device Qantas entertainment system on this flight as well. As you can see on the screen now, there's a pretty good range of similar TV shows and movie content there as well. So yeah, you're really spoilt for choice ways to consume entertainment on Qantas. You can either stream to your own device or use the IFE screen in front of you. Pretty decent indeed. For those who are wondering about in-flight Wi-Fi, unfortunately it was not available on this flight. Those who want to get really technical and say it's just a domestic flight, unfortunately we are largely flying over international airspace. We are a long way from the Australian mainland, so yeah, any chance of getting free Wi-Fi is not going to happen on a flight to Norfolk Island. Next up for lunch, I'm served a ham and cheese toastie with a Danish pastry and a Carmen's protein bar, all served on the one plate, accompanied by sparkling water, tea and coffee service and your choice of beverages. To wash down today's business class meal, I asked for the sparkling wine on offer, which was an Adelaide Hills Lois Blanc de Blanc. Not a bad little drop this one, certainly nice and citrusy, got a good taste to it. Not really a wine drinker, so not the best judges of wines, but yeah, it tasted pretty good to me. I think it's about $25 for a full bottle at Dan Murphy's. So yeah, it's nothing too expensive, but yeah, it definitely tasted better than the Grant Burge that they had on previous flights. yeah, wash it down with a fairly standard cup of white coffee as well. Anyway, back to my thoughts on Qantas Business Class meals. They're a little bit under par, to be honest, in my opinion. They're all served on the one plate, and their presentation and quality probably really isn't up to fine dining standards. If you paid cash for these flights, sometimes thousands of dollars for Qantas domestic business class flights, really don't think you're getting good value for money. Now we're making very good progress across the Pacific on our way to Norfolk Island, so what more poignant way to toast the final part of our journey today than ordering a Pacific Ale by Little Creatures. Always good range of beers on Qantas. They're the same beers whether you're in economy or business class. Very tasty one indeed. Anyway, we're only about 15 minutes now from Norfolk Island, so what better time now to sit back, relax and enjoy our absolutely stunning landing into one of the most remote Pacific Island paradises that you'll ever find on planet Earth. So enjoy this absolutely lovely, beautiful landing into Norfolk Island this afternoon, and once on the ground I'll offer my final thoughts and verdict on today's flight. And just like that, welcome to that tiny little spick of land out there in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that you can barely see on a map unless you really zoom in. We're now finally at Norfolk Island. Always longing to have travelled here for many years now, so absolutely thrilled to finally be here. And yeah, that was a really special flight today. Really thrilling flight to be able to fly an international flight to a domestic sort of destination, if you know what I mean. Now as we disembark our Qantas 737 and finally step a foot onto the beautiful, mildly warm, subtropical Pacific paradise that is Norfolk Island. Really amazing to think we started today at Australia's busiest international airport. Now we're hopping off at Australia's smallest international airport. According to the latest statistics from quite a long time ago now, Norfolk Island only had around 57,000 yearly passenger movements, a stark contrast to the 44 million back in Sydney. So you got 2 weekly flights to Brisbane with Qantas, 3 weekly flights I believe with Qantas to Sydney, and also 1 to 2 weekly flights to Auckland, New Zealand with Air Chathams, which I'll then be flying out of Norfolk all the way to in a couple days time. It's a very unique, cool little arrivals hall here at Norfolk Island. All arrivals, including from the mainland, are met by Australian Border Force. So you still got to go through customs. If you're arriving from New Zealand, obviously you've got to go through immigration as well. So That's why I couldn't film in the little arrivals hall where the baggage carousel was, because it was a customs controlled area. So yeah, very unusual experience this flight, being met by Australian Border Force officials and going through customs, even though I'm technically still arriving from my own country that I haven't even left. Anyway, we're through now, and last few glimpses of our beautiful Qantas 737-800 out there on the tarmac over there. Really beautiful airport, this one. Very easy to see your plane outside there. The very cool thing about Norfolk Island Airport is that it's incredibly close to the main settlement of Burnt Pine, only about 1.7 kilometres or about 3 kilometre drive away. Most hotels and resorts, any sort of accommodation you stay at, usually they'll arrange free complimentary pickup and drop off to the airport. Just let them know of your flight details. It's all very easy, they'll meet you for your arriving flight. Actually enough, while Norfolk Island might be an incredibly small island, an island that you really have to zoom in on a map to see a dot in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, don't be surprised though, this island that's only 8 kilometres by 6 kilometres, most of the 2,200 strong residents will own cars, and any visitors or locals alike will highly recommend anyone visiting the island on holiday to hire a car. There's actually over 120 kilometres of road on Norfolk, so unless you want to be like me and walk well over 50 kilometres of incredibly steep and windy terrain, it's recommended you hire a car at Norfolk. Most accommodation providers can tee up with a local rental company, get you a little car for around $70 a day. So for most people, this is probably going to be well and truly the way to go to see the most out of Norfolk Island in a short period of time. Now we're driving to the main settlement of Burnt Pine. Really is the crossroads of Norfolk Island, the main centre for commerce and retail. Everything you need on Norfolk Island you're probably going to find in the small little settlement of Burnt Pine. So yeah, all the roads on Norfolk from one end of the island to the other generally run through this small little town. It's got everything you need for your stay on Norfolk. Pretty well all your retail and services are based here. You got your little supermarket here, you got bakery, you got news agent, post office, bank, you got a little liquor shop, you've got the hospital, car rental hire places, the tourist bureau. Everything you name it, you're going to find it here. Surprisingly good shopping here as well for such a small little island. There's quite a few duty-free shops and a pretty good range of stuff that you can buy without having to pay GST. Anyway, if you want to see more of the spectacular scenery from all around beautiful Norfolk Island, and also learn a little bit more about the fascinating history of the island, the history of the bounty mutineers, the Pitcairn settlers, the European settlement, the convict history, the military history, all this really interesting history on the island, its unusual, sometimes strained relations with mainland Australia as well. Be sure to check out my full range of videos from around this amazing island that will be dropping on the channel shortly. Anyway, if you want to learn more about how to visit Norfolk Island, it's not the cheapest place to visit due to the limited nature of flights to the island. If you are paying cash flying Qantas, typically airfares start around $425 one way. I noticed recently they're now going for $490. If you'll fly in business class with cash like I did today, typically you're looking at around $920. I booked this flight with points, 27,600 points, and a fairly steep $129 in taxes. If you were to fly economy, all you have to pay was 12,000 points and also a similar amount in taxes. And my outbound flight to New Zealand from here, it wasn't cheap either. It cost me like 500 Australian dollars, but was a very memorable experience on the ATR 72. So yeah, my recommendation if you are flying to Norfolk, definitely one to use your Qantas points on. 12,000 for economy or 27,600 for business class. Based on my experience today, it was a pretty good redemption with points for business class, but I certainly wouldn't be paying the cash price for business. Definitely not worth it in my opinion. And just like that, welcome to absolutely stunning and pristine, beautiful Norfolk Island. Absolutely amazing little subtropical paradise here, some 1,400 kilometres off the nearest point in Australia, some 1,700 kilometres northeast of where we started in Sydney today. So yeah, we're here at Emily Bay, which is one of the most beautiful and probably most popular beach here in the whole of Norfolk. We're not too far from the historic convict settlement of Kingston actually. The flight itself, what more can I say about today's 737-800 service in business class on Qantas today? Well, it was certainly a very unique flight, certainly can give it that. Being able to get an international experience flight when technically still flying to an Australian destination is a very unique one indeed. So yeah, today's flight, even though we still finished in Australian territory, it brought all the thrills, excitement, joys, and sometimes hassles of international travel to a domestic flight in Australia. And wrapping up my thoughts today on today's flight with Qantas on their 737-800 in business class, what more could I really say? The flight itself was a pretty acceptable flight overall. The business class service was pretty good, just your stock standard recliner seats. They're fairly comfortable, but nothing to write home about. The service and the food was pretty good, very attentive crew, that was really, really nice. Yeah, good drinks, good wines, good food, and yeah, good service, good friendly cabin crew. One perhaps slight disappointment was the ground handling. The fact that the plane was nearly delayed an hour taking off because the baggage handling truck had the wrong time of departure for the flight. They thought the flight left at 10:45 instead of 9:45. That's really pretty inexcusable, to be honest. I can understand there's logistics delays, but yeah, that's just really poor in my opinion, not very excusable. And yeah, the only other thing was the pre-departure beverages. You only got given a bottle of water. That was a little bit disappointing. A glass of orange juice or water or sparkling wine would have been much appreciated. Even more so when the flight was delayed, taking off 30 to 45 minutes due to the baggage handling mishap. That should have really been the cue for the crew to give out a pre-departure drink. Anyway, we're now here on Norfolk for 4 amazing days. Can't wait to explore the entirety of every nook and cranny of this stunning South Pacific island. And then on Thursday, we're heading to New Zealand on Air Chatham's on their ATR 72 flight all the way down to Auckland. So that's going to be an incredibly unique flight. Anyway, as the sun sets here from a magnificent summer's evening here on Norfolk Island, thanks so much for watching today's flight review as we've travelled over to Australia's largest external territory of Norfolk Island in style on Qantas on the 737 business class. Really hope you've enjoyed this flight review today. Hope it's given you a really interesting viewing experience. If you have liked this review, really appreciate it. Do give it a like, leave your comments down below. Most importantly, if you haven't already, whatever brings you to the channel, if you do enjoy my content, really appreciate you do subscribe to the channel, hit that bell and notification button so you see plenty more content from here in Norfolk Island, and also plenty of my other flight reviews to come. You also visit my website aussiejetsetter.com.au for those flight reviews, industry news, destination guides, frequent flyer hacks and more. Also put a link in the description to my dedicated socials, my Instagram page, keep up where I am in the world in real time, my YouTube shorts channel, and also my dedicated Discord server for fans and community of the channel. So be sure to check out that. And from here in Norfolk Island, and until the next flight review, thanks very much for watching today and safe travels wherever that might take you.